am back again, day 3. So, today, we are talking about socks again, and what we are talking about is how to measure your feet. But before we get to all of that fun stuff, I need to remind you that my name is Kelly Slack, and I was invited to guest teach by Pearly Shell Fiber Arts. I myself am the co-owner of Black Sheep Fiber Emporium. I have 2 master's degrees in teaching. I love to teach. I was super excited to do this series. I'm a self-published author of Hoppy Feet, which is my sock book, and Froth and Foam, which is my lace book. And I am wearing a very pretty crochet lace shawl. I did not make this. This was a gift from a friend. Because, you know, we all love those handcrafted items. I have made over 100 pairs of socks, and while I don't know everything, I do know a lot. And this segment is sponsored, Socktober with Kelly, by Black Sheep Fiber Emporium, Kelly Slack Designs, which is me, and Pearly Shell. So make sure that you are giving them some love, that you are subscribing to their channels if you like to do the social media thing, which I hope you do because you're on Facebook, clearly. And we do have Instagrams, YouTubes, Facebooks, and TikToks for almost everybody. So that's where you can go if you want to find them. All right. Today is all about measuring your feet, but I do have a caveat. So yesterday, something didn't sound quite right in my head when I was talking about gauge, and that is I put down 80% instead of 85%. There's a big difference there. So when you are measuring your gauge, and you have your socks that you want to make, and you've measured your, here I've got my lovely diagram, made a diagram this morning. So you have your sock equation here. It's going to be whatever the letter is, we'll talk about that in a minute, times your stitches per inch times 0.85 for a little tighter sock or 0.9 for a slightly looser sock. And that's what I should have said yesterday, but honestly my brain's a little sleep-addled. I have a 22-month-old who has decided that she doesn't like to sleep in her crib anymore and wakes up a lot. So my apologies for saying 80% instead of 85% to 90% yesterday. All right, back to what we're doing today. So when it comes to fitting socks to your foot, you want to make sure that you are taking accurate measurements because you want your socks to fit, right? We want our socks to fit, and we want them to fit our foot. These are like my socks. This is from my box of socks. And when I say box of socks, I mean I have a box of socks. This is what I dig through when I'm trying to decide what socks I want to wear. That's not all the socks that I have. I have more socks than that, just for me. Those are my socks. Those are just my socks because I've been knitting socks for a while, and I love socks, and I wear them all the time. And I just realized that I have a hole in this pair of socks. Oh, look, here's a sock that needs repair. I was wearing these today. Here's a sock that needs repair. So I'm gonna switch my sock because it's cold out here on my deck this morning. Cold on my deck this morning. I'm in St. Louis, in case anybody is wondering, or near St. Louis. And it's a little chilly this morning. All right, there. Now my sock is changed and my foot is warm again. And now I have another sock to darn. I actually really like darning socks. I know you'll think I'm strange for that, but I do. I really like darning socks. All right, so let's talk about where to measure your foot and how to measure your foot. So if you're making socks for someone else and they know they're getting socks, or you have like talked to them about it and they know they're getting socks, you can ask them to take some measurements for you. So one of the most important measurements is actually this leg height. That's L on here. So that's where you like your sock to sit. Now some people like socks that sit at the top of the ankle. Some people like socks that are a little bit taller. Some people like calf socks. Some people like knee socks. So, and I didn't put the knee on here. And I made this morning really fast, so I hope I spelled everything right. So with this is one of the most important measurements, and you measure this flat. It usually works best if you have a stiff ruler to do this because you are measuring from the base or the bottom of your heel to the height that you like your socks. So this is your leg measurement. Really important thing here, your leg height. The next one is this one down here. This is your foot length. And that is from the base of your heel to the tip of your toe. And this one's a little bit harder to measure. Usually people will do this by standing on a hard surface and putting their foot on a piece of paper, and then they'll kind of mark the back and the front and then measure that way. Because that's one of the better ways to get an accurate measurement. If you're a tiny bit off in here, it won't really matter that much. If you're a row or two different, it's not going to matter that much, because you do want your sock to stretch a little bit so that we don't wear holes in our socks as easily. Although, as demonstrated, I am very hard on the ball of my foot. That's where I tend to wear my sock. See, there's my heel. I was wearing this one this morning. I thought it was feeling a little breezy. I'll have to fix it before it gets worse. So those are two really important measurements, are this leg and the foot measurement. So the next one that you really have to have is the ball measurement. So that's your foot circumference around the ball of your foot. This one's really, really important. It's at the widest portion of your foot directly behind your toes. So here's your toe, and here's your arch, and you want to do the ball right here, the ball of your foot. That's where you want to measure. If you have those three measurements, you can pretty well make socks for anybody. But if you want to fine-tune your sock a little bit, if you want to make it fit just a little bit better, especially if it's for you or a family member where you have access to their feet, because that is an important thing, is that you have access to their feet, then you might consider adding in these kinds of measurements. So this one would be your calf circumference. If you're doing tall socks, so you may need a little bit wider measurement around your calf, because your calf might be significantly wider than your ankle. So that's important. The next one is going to be your leg/ankle circumference, because again, you could be a little wider in your ankle or a little narrower in your ankle. So this is a good measurement to take as well. And then the last one, which this one you don't necessarily need to have, but sometimes it is nice. And you'll want to measure all of these circumference ones with a soft tape measure. I don't think I said that yet. So all of these, A, B, G, and C, should all be measured with a soft tape measure, whereas these two can be done with a hard ruler, okay? For G, this one's only important if you haven't taken into account the gusset in a sock. So if you're doing a tube sock and you're putting a heel in, you may want to add a couple of stitches around that ankle area to allow for a little more of a gusseted fit. If you look at a lot of top-down socks, especially, this one's a top-down sock, you can see that this is the gusset area right here. This is the gusset area of the sock. This is that extra bit of fabric that we knit in and decrease down so that there's room for your ankle joint to fit. It's a very important measurement if you happen to have a much wider ankle ball joint than you do an ankle or a calf. So, you know, this is a measurement that's nice to have. It's not one that you must have in order to knit socks. The three that you really have to knit socks are this leg height, the foot length, and the ball. Those are the most important ones. When you look at your overall sock, you may notice that some socks will have, ooh, this is a nicely felted one too. This is an old sock. See how it's felted all along the bottom? At least if it's felted, I know that it's not going to wear a hole as fast. So this one has a little less of a gusset area. It doesn't have as an accommodating of a gusset area. It also has, it still has a heel flap. It has a heel flap. Where's another one? Slip stitch heel flaps are going to draw in more. So this one actually has a slip stitch heel flap. So this is going to hug the back of your heel a little bit tighter. See all my fuzzies? These are well-worn socks. I love my socks. So this is the back of a sock right here with a slip stitch heel flap. It's going to draw it in a little bit more versus the sock that I had on earlier. Or where's one that I've got some in here? Here's an Eye of Partridge. This one also draws in a little more, this Eye of Partridge heel flap. It's a little hard to see. Let's see. I really love slip stitch heel flaps. Most of my socks, when I make them for myself, tend to be made that way. I find that they fit my heel a little bit better personally than a lot of other socks, and so that's what I tend to make for myself. But we'll get into sock heels and things a little bit later on. That's which video is that? That's going to be for top down heels. That'll be October 7th. See, I got this whole plan. I got a whole lesson plan. We're like cooking right through it. Let's see, do I have any more fun sock heels? This one's a plain. This one was just knit. So this is just a regular knit heel flap right here, not slipped. Those don't tend to hold up quite as well, but they can fit a little bit better. So, and we'll talk about heels and what's important there. So when you go to measure your feet, it's nice to write down all of your measurements. If you happen to have a sock ruler, you can always put them on the back in Sharpie marker. That way, if you keep your sock ruler, then you always have it with you. It's also nice to keep those in some kind of electronic file, whether that's a PDF or a Word document or a Google Doc, or like I really like the Keep app, just somewhere. It's really good to have a place where you make a list of your usual sock measurements for people, so that if you forget what you're doing, you can look that up. Okay, so let's then talk about the equations. I think I got just enough time to do that. So I have two equations on here for tighter socks and looser socks. And SPI means stitches per inch. So we talked about how to measure your gauge with stitches per inch. So the first thing you want to do is choose whichever of your measurements we're talking about. So if that's like, and I'm really looking at these measurements, A, B, C, and G. These measurements we don't, because these are height and length measurements, we're not as worried about those. But any of these circumference measurements, A, B, G, and C, can be used with these equations so that you can figure out how many stitches you would need approximately. And they'll usually come out to a funny number. It'll end in like 0.15 or 0.67 or whatever. So you can round up or round down depending on the fit of your sock. So if you want just a little tighter fitting sock, if you need a little more negative ease, especially in some places, you can use the 0.85. If you're looking for a more regular fit to your sock, it's still comfortable. It's not exactly loose. It's just not quite as tight as the 0.85 measurement. You can use 0.9. And that's just a little bit of negative ease to fit around your foot so that your socks don't wear through as fast, as we were talking about. So when you are looking at the equations here, then what you want to do is just take, if this was 9, then you would take 9 times your, say, 7.5 stitches per inch times 0.85, and that would tell you how many stitches you would need for a tighter sock. And then you can compare that to your pattern. And again, you can go up and down a little bit. You can wiggle like 2 stitches up or a stitch down pretty easily to help accommodate your pattern. And remember, you can always add in a stitch here or there and then take it away later. Even in patterned socks, you can do that. It won't affect them too much, but it'll allow you to customize your socks so that it fits you just that little bit better. And again, so that you don't wear through your socks quite as fast, so that they last longer, because we do want our socks to last as long as possible if we're going to go to the effort of making them by hand, right? Okay, I hope that I have covered everything that I intended to cover today in measuring feet. Our next video is going to be about tools, needles, and techniques. So we're going to talk about two-circs, double-pointed needles, flexible needles, magic loops, 2 at a time, and all those things that you want to have in order to make socks successfully. So that's the next thing on our list. And don't forget to go show our lovely sponsors a little love. Go follow them. That's Black Sheep Fiber Emporium, Kelly Slack Designs, and Pearly Shell. And make sure that you're checking out some of those other videos about Socktober as well. I love socks. I really love socks. Clearly, I love socks. I have an entire box of socks. And again, those are just the ones I kept for myself and made for myself. So, until tomorrow, I'll be back on again tomorrow. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep crafting. If you're doing Spin Together, don't forget it starts at noon your time today. And you can spin for socks. These are hand-spun, hand-knit socks. I did make them from merino. They're super soft. And they've felted a little bit, which is nice because hopefully they'll last a little bit longer since they're merino. And the merino ones don't last quite as long otherwise. So anyway, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, keep crafting, and I'll see you tomorrow.